Yes, 100 men would beat one gorilla, and I don't even think it's all that close. But first, we have to establish a lot of stuff, like my name. Hi, I'm Triumph, and today I'm going to explain why I think a bunch of people are vastly overrating the gorilla here. But let's set up some ground rules. So I think a Coliseum type setting is probably for the best. That means no one gets to escape. All 100 men are going to go in there and either win or lose. That also means the gorilla can't escape, which I know you guys may think that's not going to be an issue, but I promise it will be. What type of men? It's going to be the average dude. I'm not going to have it set up where we get like 100 prime Mike Tysons, and it's going to be the average gorilla, perhaps a silverback gorilla, still going to be on the higher end. So maybe an average silverback gorilla or a high-end gorilla. The point is, we're not getting like some super freak version of a gorilla, but one gorilla should be fair enough. There's going to be no weapons. There's on either side. The gorilla's not going to be able to pick up a rock and bash a bunch of people's head in, saving some energy. And the people can't bring spears or guns or whatever. It's just bare fisticuffs. You can get elbows, knees. If they think they can use jujitsu, go for it. But no weapons, just straight bare fist. This one might be a little controversial, but I'm going to assume no psychological damage on either side. What I mean by that is seeing another man go down doesn't mean one of the other men are going to quit. That also means the gorilla doesn't realize it doesn't have the means to beat them and tries to run away. There's no forfeits, sort of. You fight until you win or lose, and both sides will have great reasons to have forfeits. I'm going to explain two modes, and one's going to get a lot more focus. Then it's going to be the gauntlet, where one gorilla gets to go up against consecutive people, and the other version where there's just 100 men dropped in the area with one gorilla, and they just figure out what happens from that point. Before we even get to that, why the fuck are we even asking this question? Why are you watching this? Why have you watched probably 30 TikToks of random dudes in their cars explaining this? Why are you watching me? It is 8 a.m. for me. It's 8 a.m. for me. I didn't wake up early to do this. I didn't go to sleep because I stayed up all night researching the best way to figure out how this works. Look, it was somebody asked on Twitter. Maybe it's similar to like the can one man fight 100 toddlers, which I will do, but it's not going to be one man. I'm going to but it's not going to be one man. I'm going to see if I personally can fight 100 toddlers based on how many punches I can do, how many kicks I can do. If you want to see that, then subscribe, because I'm going to be making more videos. And look at this face. Do you wanna miss this? I don't think so. How strong are each opponent? Now let's talk about the gorilla stats first. I think that matters most. We're talking. Let's put it up here on my shelf next to my Sonic over here. The weight. I think the silverback gorilla can weigh up to 480 pounds, but as low as around 200 pounds for a regular gorilla. So we're going to put it in around the 440 pound range, or 200 kilograms. That's the last time I'm going to mention kilograms. I did start putting the conversions. I gave up. I'm in America. I don't care about kilograms. They're actually roughly the same height as the average male, about 5'9" for the humans and about 5'9" for the gorilla. The punch force has a range of from 1,300 pounds to 2,700 pounds, which is a fuck ton. For reference, it takes about 550 pounds to basically obliterate human bones or human skull or rib cage. So one swing does that. Also, their bite force is about 1,300 pounds of force too. So whether they bite you, whether they squeeze you, whether they punch you, I'm sorry. Say goodbye. Pray to whatever God you know, but know that they already abandoned you if you're in this situation. They can lift from roughly 1,800 pounds to I think 3,000 pounds is what we would assume the average is. Meaning, like, say if they were to like bench, deadlift, or squat, they're roughly 1,000 pounds heavier than the strongest lift that the most primely trained humans can do. So just pure pushing force, insane. Also, 30% more muscles in their arms than in their legs, so a lot of their body weight is focused on those arms and the chest region also, which smaller legs. The last but most important stat for the gorilla, not for their help but for their detriment, is they have about 15% slow twitch muscles and 85% fast twitch muscles. Now, I have my source here. That could be slightly wrong about that, but most of them have fast twitch muscles, which means, I'm not going to go into super depth about this, but it means they can pack a lot of energy and a lot of strength and a lot of force very quickly. That's what fast twitch muscles do, where slow twitch muscles are for endurance feat. You may not be able to pack the same amount of force or spend the same amount of energy, but you can do it for a much longer time. Now, let's talk about the man stats. Now, the average man weighs about 200 pounds, so we're gonna go with that. They're also about 5'9", we're staying with that. I'm 6'2", so all that average shit, that's not... They can exert about 350 pounds of force, which, if you haven't noticed, is a lot less than even the bare minimum 1,300 pounds of force for a punch, and roughly about 500 to 600 for a stomp, which will come in handy in the future. And their slow twitch to fast twitch is about 50-50, so they got roughly an equal amount of both, though it can change based on the amount of training a person's done. These people haven't done any unique training, they just have the same average 50-50 as the regular man would have. Next, we're going to explain the general advantages and disadvantages that each group has. After that, we'll explain the actual strategies that one should go about using. But first things first, why the gorillas actually don't have this. Now, I mentioned the slow twitch and quick twitch muscles in both groups, and that may not be something that you normally would have considered. In this situation, it absolutely has to be. A gorilla having predominantly quick twitch muscles means they can exert a lot of force, basically obliterating the first couple, well, probably first 10 to 15 opponents they see without any effort. In fact, like we said, the human skull takes around 500 plus pounds of damage to actually fracture it, but with a low end of 1,300 and a high end of 2,700, any bone that's pretty much touched first is going to be absolutely destroyed. However, the issue with the gorilla is they're not trying to do endurance battles, and they're actually not spending that much time fighting for very long. Now, gorillas spend most of their combat situations proving that they're more of a threat than the other. Gorillas, we're all apes and we're all pretty smart. We don't put ourselves in dangerous situations intentionally. That also means we evolved for a specific type of interaction. We win a fight quickly or you lose a fight quickly and then they get out of there. So if gorillas realize they're outmatched, they leave, they flee, and then that gorilla becomes the dominant or alpha, whatever, a dominant gorilla for whatever particular situation. What this means is they don't have the means to long extended fights. Now, the reason that they can actually extend a little bit further could be the damage being received is going to be less than fighting another gorilla, but that still doesn't help if you're no longer doing the damage you were doing originally. Say, for example, the maximum damage of 2,700 pounds, right? If it only took roughly 550 pounds to, let's say, obliterate, knock out, or kill an individual opponent, that would be great if each opponent was in perfect distance to take the same force per swing, and you could knock out 5 in one time, hypothetically, and presumably if they could get that perfect kill shot 20 straight times, they could perhaps win that fight. But even that's not going to happen. Likely, you're not going to be, even as a human, able to swing 20 full maximum strength punches and keep it the same type of accuracy and same type of efficacy. But more important than that, you just want to be able to hit 5 people with the same amount of force. It's going to be dispersed through multiple people, through multiple parts of the body. That force is going to be diminished significantly. That first person might take the entirety of that force, but even the second person taking that impact, it's going to be probably even less than half, maybe even a third of that damage. It's still going to feel like shit, but it's not going to feel like that much shit. Especially, like, there was a phrase, someone took a picture of a gorilla and got punched, and it said that felt like they were getting hit by a truck. But one of the interesting thing is when a truck hits you, the entire mass is focusing on your entire body. Versus a punch, it's going to expand one point and radiate out, but it's not going to radiate out through the next body. Anyway, the point is, they can't expend all of that damage, but they did expend all of the energy that it took. For an example, I'd like you guys right now, if you're in an area, to try and throw as many full strength punches as you can. The strongest punch you think you can do. It should be either a hook or an uppercut. Come this way and punch like that. Do that 20 times and see if you can do anything else after as a trained person. Now, your stamina as a human is better than the long-term stamina of a gorilla. Not just for throwing punches specifically, but for doing anything else in that situation. Now, the reason I say that is, as a gorilla is doing anything else, maybe the person's trying to run away, you grab them, you bite them, there's still other humans that they have to continue fighting. How much energy do they expend? Is it one punch kill? Does it take 2 punches to do that? Does it take 3, 4, or 5? Does the gorilla know to stop attacking after it's wasting up energy? Say we're in the gauntlet scenario. You keep pummeling one person till they're dead and then the next person comes out. Did you expend 10% of your energy on 1 out of 100 opponents? Because, well, you're a gorilla and you don't really know much about energy conservation. Perhaps you think I'm overstating the significance of the gorilla's stamina reserves, but they rely on something called the anaerobic metabolism for about 85% of their energy. And what happens in those cases are basically glucose stores, which are in your body and every animal's body, are relied on or they're metabolized by a particular enzyme which releases something called ATP. ATP is what allows us to do, well, physically everything that requires a muscle contraction. And with those glucose stores being in a large reserve, but a large, instantly fast depleting reserve, they're going to run out much more quickly, but the problem is they can't be restored with the same quickness. Now, the way that your slow twitch muscles get energy, it largely relies on your respiratory system and getting oxygen in to help process and getting ATP through to your muscles, which again allows you to work longer. So to get energy back for you, you're breathing, but to get energy back for that gorilla, they have to get some sort of food source, and in this situation, they wouldn't be able to do that. Again, you as a human would still be getting tired, and I imagine if you're bashed over the head by a gigantic gorilla fist, you're going to be a little bit fatigued. But unless there's an instant supply of bananas popping up on the battlefield, I don't see a reason why this gorilla would be able to keep up its energy. A pretty significant detail is a human can be one-shot by a gorilla, but a gorilla is barely taking damage from an individual punch of a human, but the death by 1,000 cuts is going to be where we get our win here. You're not going to be the one dude who probably knocks out the gorilla. You're going to be one of the mass that does it. So as the gorilla is dealing with that first interaction where it expended a lot of its energy, then it's expanding probably, we can say roughly 5% of its energy per interaction, and that energy reserve is draining quickly. Those punches are still going to do a lot of damage, but again, say they're at 1,300, so they save as much energy as possible. 1,300 pounds of force, they knock out the first guy, the second guy, the third guy, the fourth guy, the fifth guy. If at any point they're wasting energy, biting, slamming, doing that Hulk thing, Tipsy, edit in the thing where Hulk does that to Loki, thank you. All that's going to waste large amounts of energy reserve that's not going to be replenished quickly. So this 1v1 situation might actually be the worst, because it's going to waste large amounts of energy not being aware that it needs to reserve any of it for later. Now, the entire time, the first fight, it's probably just going to obliterate the person. There's absolutely nothing that they can do. The second fight, much of the same. Maybe by the 8th to 10th fight, where the gorilla's been fighting for, we'll say roughly 20 minutes at this point, assuming it takes some time to actually get some kills after the first 3 people that can move around a little bit more, the energy's a little bit higher, and those punches are a lot slower. At this point, it's actually going to start receiving some damage. Very little though. Again, that 350 pounds of force isn't going to be even enough to break a human skull instantly. Maybe if you did like 2 or 3 punches, it should. We actually have an interesting thing where there's a 25% chance that a punch to a rib fractures a human rib. But that same force isn't going to happen the same way, because gorillas have much stronger bones, they're much denser bones, roughly the same size, so you only really have to worry about the density in that one instance, but also the muscles around those bones are stronger, and the skin is considerably thicker, and also they're getting punched by a lot stronger force. But then it comes to, well, how do we figure out how strong you'd have to be to do damage? I think the bigger question is, how strong would a gorilla have to be to not take damage or to not die? For example, say the gorilla instantly one-shotted somehow the first 15 people and only 85 people are capable of giving damage. If each one of those people gets one punch in, they've done about 29,000 pounds of damage generally to their body somewhere. Just one full force uppercut before you die. and then maybe you get 1, 2, and then you die. But maybe you're getting a lot more. Maybe you're getting some stomps in. Maybe that gorilla gets slow. Maybe after it's lethargic, you're getting a couple more in. All you need to do is get 2 punches in, and now you're at 60,000 pounds of damage. Even if a gorilla was, what was it, 100 times more durable than like the human bones, that's leaving at 50,000 pounds of pressure required to fracture a regular skull. If 2 punches on average are taking in, there's going to be some fracturing of some bones. Just 2. That assumes that it only takes 2 full force punches over the entire 85 opponents. That also assumes that the first 15 people who died did functionally no damage at any point. And perhaps it's possible, but highly unlikely. Another thing you have to consider is how much energy it would take to throw said punch for a gorilla. I think a gorilla's arm is about 22 pounds. Now, I couldn't find a specific calculation for the amount of energy expended by a gorilla per punch based on like a number of like joules or calories specifically. And believe me, I spent 3 hours trying to see if anyone just had like, hey, punch energy per punch. We had something like 0.2 kilocalories per like human punch, but we didn't have anything for gorilla punches because we don't have the same ability to, analyze them because they're actual gorillas, which is pretty fair. But it does seem like the average human, absent training, could probably throw reasonably strong punches for around 3 minutes before their stamina is depleted. They're useless. However, that 3 minutes is going to be extended by, well, maybe not 100, because again, the first 15, we're going to let them die. But multiply that by 85. So you can do that math. You can put it right here. Last thing I want to cover is the actual maximum speed of the gorilla, which is around 25 miles per hour, which is faster than the max speed of the average human. Now, the fastest humans are around 28 miles per hour apparently, but I think the average human's capping somewhere around 17 to 18 miles per hour. So if you're running from the gorilla at first, you're getting absolutely slaughtered. They're catching you and they're demolishing you. But again, you run into the same issue. They're running out of energy, which is a very, very valuable resource for the gorilla. They're not getting that energy back. If they're chasing the first 5-10 people down, that's a lot of weight you have to carry. Anybody that's 200 pounds, even going on a run right now, if they remember what running was like when they were 140 pounds, you can imagine the amount of energy expenditure that's really required to do such a thing. So now, if any or all of these people decide their first strat is to run as fast as they can and then start trying to throw punches, they're going to put themselves in an advantage, or at the very least put the future people in an advantage, because first guy's running, he's going to throw weaker punches because he's tired and still get obliterated anyway. At this point we can talk about strategies, but I feel like I've covered why this is a pretty unfair fight. If it's the 1v1 gauntlet situation, presumably after those first 15, well, fuck it, we'll even say 20 relatively easy kills, the gorilla's going to be starting to take so much damage, and they're not going to be able to match it probably by the 50-person march, where the point the gorilla's going to be so lethargic that they're just going to be taking hits. It's at that point left for the last 50 people to be able to constantly target, hopefully, the head. Now, this assumes there's no communication, so they all know, like, hey, last 50 dudes, target the same spot of the body. Make sure when those slow hits come, you're doing just rib shots and head shots. And again, you don't want to do like a front rib shot because the gorillas have like a padding area here, right over here where the skin's a little bit thinner than the rib cage. That's where you want to be hitting on the body, or you want to be getting the back of the skull, or maybe the eyes and the teeth. But I probably wouldn't want to put my fist where their mouth are, because that bite force, they can get one bite and then your hand is done for. However, if your hand is done for, you've got another hand, which likely is going to be your left, because you probably threw your right hand first, going to be weaker, still capable of doing some damage. Maybe you gouge an eye out. Likely not, though. I think point being there, throwing those maximum punches while running after people, while trying to bite earlier people, puts them at a massive disadvantage. My estimation is the gorilla probably gets to the high 60s, low 70s on average before it taps out. Now, the swarm scenario, even worse. Because a gorilla doesn't have the ability to have target prioritization the same way. Even if it did, I'm not sure it'd really matter. I mean, they can knock out the first couple of guys, but if the gorilla's spending its time trying to chase people across even a contained space, it's going to have a lot of difficulty. We can contain the space small enough so that the gorilla has to be in close range and people can't run, but at that point, again, after the gorilla's expended a bunch of energy trying to put on a show of force, banging its chest, slamming people, you can start swarming and restricting movement. Now, everybody should know that a punch from here to here does a lot more damage from a punch from here to here because there's a bunch of people around you. They can throw people, but if you're doing that little stupid spin move, that's going to be considerably less effective if they're starting on you and you're throwing them onto other bodies. That's not going to kill somebody. This full force whack, that's effectively a punch. That will knock somebody out cold. That'll kill somebody. That does assume that they're able to get that off. But the closer we create the situation where they can't run away, the more we've swarmed and decrease the ability to get the maximum distance for a punch or a swing technique or maneuver. So, maybe you want it to be closer so no one can run away and tire out the gorilla. If you do that, now we've added restriction force. We've also added the fact that the gorilla can be generally throwing hands, but it's likely going to swing a lot like this in front, and anybody who's behind is guiding. The muscle tissue is on the back, is slightly weaker on a gorilla. Gorillas aren't doing the same level of, well, gorillas actually have a really strong lat muscles. They have the way that their muscles and pectoral connection goes, it actually makes it pretty strong over here. So doing a bunch of back punches isn't going to do that much damage, but this area right here, that head, that's still going to do a lot of damage. I mean, I wouldn't do things like a normal fight, like trying to kick its knee in. Those neck muscles are still going to be pretty strong. A lot of just like overhand punches to the back of the head, which are going to do massive damage regardless, especially right where this connective tissue right here is. Maybe you can do some damage to the spinal cord, enough people are happening. If it's busy biting someone, biggest thing, you're busy punching on top, overhand force generating more power than normal, roughly 50 to 100 more pounds, or stomping roughly 200 more pounds of force on, whether it's, you could kick the ribs, you can kick the arms, you can kick anything. It's grabbing your foot, but as it's grabbing one person's foot, there's 5, 20, 30 more people doing so. I think the swarm technique puts in a really bad situation. It's the same reason why one man versus 100 toddlers is probably going to go really poorly. You can only focus on so many things at a time, and there's just too many people replacing. I think that about sums it up. If you have some reason why you think the gorilla's, I mean, really, you think the gorilla stamina is better than I think the gorilla stamina is. And if you can find evidence that the gorilla has a lot more stamina, which maybe you just show me a video of like, wow, this gorilla's running on a treadmill for 45 minutes. If you can find a gorilla running on a treadmill for 45 minutes and then going in winning a fight, sure, you got me. But other than that, if you lasted this long, you're already subscribed and you've liked this video, and the next thing you should be doing is joining the Skelly Discord, which has a link in the description. That's where I had the conversation with my community to figure out that I even wanted to do this in the first place. And this was something that I started working on at 11 p.m. last night, and again, I think it's 9 now. So I do weird things because my community asked me to, but it'll only get worse as more of you join, so maybe I don't want you to join. Anyway, do a like, do a subscribe, do a crime. Just kidding, don't do a crime. And I'm out.